What is up, everybody? My name is Chadwickbaum of Chadwickbaum Vlogs, and this is my podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my second installment of my podcast series where I'm just doing podcasts. I don't know how long I'm going to do podcasts for. I mean, the last one, Jade's Corner, didn't last too long, and I didn't have consistent uploading. Well, this one, I plan to actually have consistent uploading. Now, guys, let's just jump right in here. I want to say, first off, if you hear me sniffling and like this or coughing throughout this podcast, yeah, I'm sick. I was taking medication, cold and flu medication. I believe I have one of the two, the flu or the cold. I don't know which one it is. I never know the difference. They feel the same to me. Hold on, guys. Let me fix my camera here. Something's not right. Okay, that's fine. Okay, yes. So I have the cold or flu. I don't know exactly which one. Sorry for those of you watching the video version of this. And I was taking the medication, and I felt really good. I felt great, as you do when taking all medication. After a while, you start to feel better. Well, I stopped taking the medication because I thought, well, I'm definitely healing and getting better. Well, I've gotten worse again. And I don't know if it's because I stopped taking the medication or just somebody has got me sick again, because I'm definitely exposed to a lot of sick people. And I think I got it again, or it just kind of phased out for a minute and then came back, because this morning I actually threw up. Not to gross you guys out, but I did throw up, but it was totally by accident. I was drinking a soda and it went down the wrong pipe, which actually caused me to throw up, and I'm still feeling gross from that. Now, podcast-wise, guys, I want to say I'm sorry. The last podcast, the first 3 seconds, you could hardly hear me, and then it kicked in, which I don't know if it's going to do that again, and if it does, sorry. If it does, I have a way to combat that. I am actually recording this time. I didn't mention it in the podcast because I didn't know it happened, but I stupidly deleted the audio version of the podcast. So there is no audio version of that podcast. So that's why you couldn't actually hear the podcast very well. Yeah, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, guys. I did not mean to make that mistake. But if this first 3 seconds of this podcast is, however, say, quiet with me recording it, it should help, definitely. And make sure to check out the audio version if you just want to listen to this podcast. Go ahead and go to inspirational posts on Facebook. That is where the podcast will be. The name still hasn't changed. I don't know if it's going to change. Facebook has to look it over for whatever reason. I may just have to create a new page for everybody to go like. But yes, that will be where the podcast, the audio version of the podcast, will be. Now, it's not exactly audio version because Facebook doesn't do a podcast thing. In the past, I guess they used to, but they don't anymore. This will be a video formatted audio version of the podcast. There will just be a picture and it'll be a video you can just turn on and listen to while you're driving or doing homework, whatever you're doing. Just turn it on, because I want to get this podcast popular enough to where I can actually try to find some actual legitimate podcast posting platforms to post on. I'm still looking. If you guys know any podcast posting platforms, let me know. There are a few that I know of that I might try, but I'm not completely sold on them just yet. No, I'm not. But yes, that's where the podcast is going to be posted. Now, before I get too far down this rabbit hole, let's go ahead and start with what I actually want to talk about today. Now, I said this podcast is going to be a lot of things, and today we're going to talk about my first time experiencing my true self, which is Jade. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am out as transgender, but I don't live full-time transgender. And I just want to talk about, for those of you who know me as my trans self, my first experiences with being trans and my first time experiencing myself. I mean, to me, it's a really personal story and I love it. So I figured, why not share it with the podcast? So the first time I actually experienced was beautiful. But before I talk about that, let's start like the beginning. Let's start at the beginning and work to my first experience, and then we'll talk about when I found out I was trans and all that good stuff. Okay, so first experience I ever had, excuse me, first experience I ever had, I was like young. I was a very young kid. I was actually in second grade, believe it or not. I was in second grade, and the only reason I remember that is because my cousin was in the same class as me, and he was in first grade. Now, one day, I had been, one day, I had stayed the night at my grandmother's house, and the next day I had to go to school. So, being that I was at my grandmother's house, I felt a slight bit more freedom. So I was like, you know what? My parents aren't here. My parents aren't going to control what I'm wearing. And I get away with it, So I decided to do some sneakery. And what I ended up doing is my sister and my brother and I all had... Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so sorry. Like I said, I'm sick. But anyway, my sister and brother and I, we each all had our own clothing at my grandmother's house. So we kept separate changes of clothing at my grandmother's house. And so when I stayed the night over there, I went to my sister's drawer because my sister was younger than me, which she is way younger than me. So trying to actually fit in her clothes was difficult, and even now would be difficult, but I wouldn't do that nowadays. This was just back in the day before I actually had my own clothes and was able to express who I am. But anyway, I went to her drawer and pulled out some things that I liked, and I put them on and tried them on. Well, the next day when I came to go into school, I put everything on and threw my clothes on over it, so like I could wear it under my clothes and I'd feel good and nobody would know. Well, it came to recess time, and if you're not from here, I went to this school called Greenwood Elementary. Well, the way it's set up is there's this long hallway, and there's another part of the hallway. So it's like an L. It's basically an L shape. It goes the long hallway, and then you got the shorter hallway, and there's, I believe exactly, well, it used to be this way. So they've since remodeled, but the school had a set of doors that exited out one of the out. There was one set of doors so you could exit out the short hallway, and then there was a set of doors at the end. So I knew that was very used because that was more or less for like when you were leaving school that day. So I snuck over to that side where nobody could see me with my cousin. I said, here, I want to show you something. I pulled up my shirt, took off my sweatpants, because I wore sweatpants a lot back in elementary school for some reason, especially the kind with the buttons, which made me very uneasy and uncomfortable because I was afraid that somebody would just come up and like tear them off and pants me. So I was very afraid of that. But no. So I started to slowly undress because I wanted to like walk around and see what people thought, and well, we were standing over in the corner. Well, one of the teachers on recess duty had seen us and was like, hey, what are you two doing over there? And so I immediately put everything back on. I was like, oh, nothing, we're just playing. And she's like, well, come over where we can see you. And yeah, that was that. So I don't remember the last of what happened that day, but what I do remember is just what I told you. And that was like the first time I had ever like gone in public wearing girls' clothes. But throughout that time period, I spent several times at my grandmother's house. And my brother actually mentioned this to me when I came out. He said, he's like, it wasn't that difficult not to notice. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He's like, I noticed you always going through our grandma's closet. You were looking at her clothes. I just kind of like put two and two together. They kind of knew before I said anything. But throughout my time spending most of my days at my grandmother's house, I would always do things like sneak clothes, try on clothes, and my grandparents were usually in one part of the house. They would stay to one portion of the house and particularly wouldn't move from that spot of the house for a little bit. So it definitely made it easy for me to try on clothes and feel comfortable. And throughout half of my life when I was younger, my cousin actually lived with my grandmother. What she is, don't know exactly, so don't quote me. She's a few years older than me. We'll say that. But she wasn't much bigger as I got older. She wasn't much bigger in weight, is what I want to say. She wasn't much bigger in weight than I was. So it made it definitely easier when she lived there for me to try on clothes because they fit a lot similar. And so I would sometimes sneak and try on a lot of her clothes. And I would definitely say she had some cute outfits and great looks. And I admired her looks. So that's why a lot of times I would go when she wasn't home. I'd go when she was at work and do that stuff. And I just had a really good time. And one funny experience, actually. So my sister one year for Halloween was this cheerleader. And if I can find the photos, I will insert it so you can see exactly what the outfit looked like. But when I was really young, it was after that Halloween, my sister had her costume that she wore for Halloween as this cheerleader at my grandmother's house. So I had taken it and I tried it on because I wanted to see how it felt, Well, it was obviously, like I said, my sister was younger than me, so I was able to tightly squeeze into the son of a gun. I wasn't able to button it up or zip it up. However, I can't remember how it went together, but yeah, I was not able to do that, but I was able to wear it as long as I didn't show the back end. Well, my cousin was actually there at my grandparents' house when I was doing this. And so I wanted to sneak around in it. Well, my cousin was in the bathroom, and that put me in a hard place because I was trying to like fastly run by the bathroom and not let her see me. Well, I ended up running past the bathroom, and she caught me out of the corner of her eye, and she's like, whoa, hold up, what is this? Because I was like trying to, I can't remember if I was either trying to run past to like sneak around in it or run past to try to get back to the bedroom to take it off. Now that I think about it, I think I was trying to get to the bedroom. Well, she sees me and goes, what are you doing? And at first she was like totally like caught off guard and surprised, but then she was like, it's like, this is funny. You look actually really good in this. Like making a joke, like, what are you doing? And just laughing about it and playing it off. But I played it off too. And so I went back to the bedroom, took it off, and nothing was ever said after that. But I did try on her clothes throughout my life while she lived there, or clothes that she left there. And I went through this phase where if I liked something, and I would like take it and like hide it somewhere so nobody would find it, so I could like keep wearing it. Well, a couple of times my sister noticed some hiding spots that I had and found some of the stuff I had, or my grandma found it. And my sister, she would tattle on me, and my grandma would confront me about it, and I would say, well, it's all for a video. And then my grandma would say, well, if it's all for a video, why wouldn't you just put it back where you got it and then use it for the video? And it was just a lie. So she obviously kind of saw past my lie. And I was like, yeah. But now I said that I was able to do this at my grandparents' house most of my life. Now you're probably wondering about my own household. Well, my own household, where I grew up, the house I grew up in, it was only a 1, 2, 3. It was only a 3-bedroom. And me and my brother actually shared a bedroom. And through my middle school years, I actually was homeschooled. But I wasn't able to dress up as much because my brother was, like I said, my brother was in the same bedroom as me, and I felt like I couldn't do it in front of him because it'd be weird, he would question, and it's like, I felt weird. I didn't want him to tell my parents. I didn't want my sister to find out. So I just didn't do it in front of any of them. I said, no way, I'm not doing this. No. This is no. Well, okay, so one day, when nobody was home, and like I said, I was homeschooled, so my mom stepped out for a few minutes and said, don't worry, we're not going to start your school till I get back. So I was like, okay, perfect, cool. And so what I ended up doing was, once my mother was gone, I went into my sister's room, and back then, my sister had this closet, and she had this big bin that was full of like costumes, like costume dresses and dresses that were handed down to her to use as costumes. And there were some bigger ones that I actually, believe it or not, fit into. So I was like, cool. And so I went in there. Well, my sister, then again, had this Halloween costume that she wore one year for Halloween, and it was this beautiful Cinderella looking dress. I wanted to feel all nice and wear it and see how it felt. Well, I had tried this on once before and knew that it took me a little bit to get it on. So I made sure that nobody was home. Like, I checked all the rooms and everything and made sure everything was good because I didn't want to get caught, So what I did is I started to get into it, and it took me about, I want to say 10 minutes to get into this thing. So I finally squeezed into the thing. And once I got squeezed in there and all nice and tight, I was like, okay, we're good. I was halfway through, got it on, and I put it over the shoulders. I was like, perfect, we're golden. And after I get it on, I'm like, okay, I hear the front doorknob start to jiggle. And I'm like, oh crap. And obviously it takes me as much time to take it off as it does to put it on. So I'm freaking out at this point. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I had to like stop, just figure it out. And I went into fight or flight mode, and I jumped in my bed, threw the covers over. Well, I slammed the bedroom door, jumped in my bed, threw the covers over, and I put the covers over my body, but not my face. Well, my dad comes walking in the room, and it was my dad that came home. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I heard the door open, I'm naked, man. And that was my excuse. And he's like, oh, okay. And well, he works as a carpet cleaner, so he's in and out of the house all the time. And he had just happened to be popping home for whatever reason. Well, after he left, I got nervous and I didn't want to do it anymore because by that time I was afraid my mom was going to come home soon. So I just took it off and put it back where it belonged. And yeah, didn't want to get in trouble. So I put it back and then went back to doing whatever I was doing that day. Now, I've had a lot of close calls and a lot of times where I've been caught and my grandma has ratted me out to my parents. And back then my parents, I'm not going to say were strict, but they didn't want me to do that sort of thing in their household, especially through my high school years and growing up. But we'll get into that. Now, let's go ahead and jump forward to the first time I found out who I was. Not like found out that I was trans, but found out that this is me. So, okay. So, back in the day, I had my own phone. So, I had my own capabilities to listen to I think this actually would have been around the era I had my iPod. So I had my little iPod Shuffle. I'll put a picture in the video version. For those of you listening, I'm sorry. Go to YouTube, go to Chadwickbaum Vlogs at youtube.com to see the picture. But I had my iPod Shuffle. It was the longer one that you could watch music videos on, the small one. And so I was over at my grandmother's house. I brought that over with me, and I decided to listen to some music. Well, I decided to get my grandparents were off doing something in another room, and I decided to get all dressed up. So I got all dressed up, and my sister had brought over a wig of hers that she had from her costume bin I just got through telling you about. And it was this Hannah Montana wig, and it was so, I liked it because I had never seen a wig before, and I was like, well, this gives me the opportunity to have long hair even though I don't have long hair. So I took it was this blonde Hannah Montana wig, and I put it on and got all dressed up and started listening to the song Naturally by Selena Gomez. And I'll walk you through this. I have since tried to recreate the scenario, but have not been able to whatsoever. But, so I put the headphones in, and I'm sitting there listening to the song, looking in the mirror, just talking or just lip syncing the song and dancing and looking at myself in the mirror. And out of nowhere, as soon as I did that and started playing the song, something inside me just filled up with some sort of joy. I felt this sensation that I have never felt before and have always tried to recreate. And it was at that point that I knew that this was me. This is who I was supposed to be. Not that I'm quoting Demi Lovato or anything. I think that's lyrics to a Demi Lovato song, but no, seriously, I knew that was me. that was the person I was supposed to be, and it felt good. And now fast forward in the future, not too long ahead in the future, I was over at my grandparents' house, and one thing I should mention is every time I'd be over at my grandparents' house, when I would have a free second, I would go get on their computer. And my dad's office used to be over there, so they had internet and a computer. So I'd get on there and go to YouTube and search videos. Well, when nobody was around, I would watch these boy to girl transformation videos. So like sisters doing their brother's makeup, transforming them into girls, or boys transforming into girls, full body makeup and hair and clothes tutorials, that sort of thing. Well, you know, when you get excited about something, get a rush about something, and you start watching, and then I gotta say this, it's like a porn addiction. You just can't stop watching, and then once you get burnt out on it, you need more. You need something that's like stronger. It's like a drug addiction. Once you wear out on the drug you've been taking for a while, you need something stronger to help fulfill your needs. And so after watching these videos forever, I finally was like, okay, I have pretty much seen almost every boy to girl makeup tutorial out here. And it's like, is there any more out here? So I was like, there's got to be more out here. So I went and looked, and I was like, I wasn't finding anything, even on the internet. I was finding pretty much the same thing I had already seen. So finally, I went to YouTube and was like, okay, well, how about this? I typed in boy wants to be girl, and I had no idea about this topic. So I typed it in and on YouTube, and a lot of things came up as transgender, transvestite, and tranny. And I was like, well, what is this? And I was very scared to watch those videos because I didn't know what they were. So I was like, well, maybe this is something I shouldn't watch. And so I never clicked on those videos. Well, then when I typed in boy wants to be girl and that stuff came up, I was like, okay, well, what is transgender? So I went to Google and typed it in on Google, and I was like, what is transgender? And when I started reading the definition, my heart, everybody has this moment that's trans. Once they finally research it, my heart was just like, oh my gosh. Inside, I was like, I feel the exact same way of what this definition is saying. And it was at that point I knew that's who I was. Seriously, that's who I was. Now, I'm running very short on time, so we're going to skip ahead to my high school years. Now, my high school years were the very fun years of experiencing my feelings. Freshman year of high school, I came out to my best friend, Justin Long, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And he was a very strong supporter. And my high school years were some of the roughest years for my trans life, because I wanted to be myself, but unfortunately could not be myself at that point in life. So one night I was spending the night at my friend Justin's house, and I had came out to Justin and I said, hey man, I couldn't, even though we were at the same house, I couldn't come to him face to face and tell him. So I needed to tell him what was wrong. I told him my feelings, and he said, listen. He went and talked to his mom, and he said, listen, this just happened. Kate just came out to me. What do I do? And she basically told him, well, support him, be there for him, be his friend, and go talk to him, you know? And I was like, okay. I was like, perfect. And so we had a very long talk that night, and it was very great, and I was grateful for it. And it was that, sorry guys, and it was after that moment that I knew that he was a very true friend and someone I could trust. And we had a great friendship because of it. And he was supportive, and he would literally kick anybody's ass that talked shit about me being trans or my transition. And everybody thought he was the coolest guy for being friends with me. And it was amazing. Although he was not the first person I came out to, just in my high school years he was. The first person I actually came out to was my best friend, Kanan Reeves, and that was in person. I had told him, I was like, hey man, I need to talk with you. Is it okay if I have a talk with you? And I was just real with him. And I mean, obviously he had some questions right then and there, as did Justin. He also had questions, but I was straight up honest. And I told him, I was like, this is how I feel. And I told Justin, I said, hey man, I don't know how to tell my parents. What do I do? Even though around this time I had already came out to my parents. But it just kind of felt like it was going nowhere, and I wanted to tell him, like, I want to do this now. But he was great for that, and we had a lot of personal talks on that subject, and I will always appreciate him for that, even though he's gone. But fast forward to when I was in my sophomore year of high school. So my sophomore year of high school, I really started having bad anxiety, and along with anxiety came up my transgender feelings again. So I once then again brought it up to my mom and said, listen, I'm being, in all seriousness, where are we at with this problem? Like, I want to know, how come we quit talking to this therapist? I like therapy. I want to talk to somebody. Is there a way we could talk to somebody, please? I need to talk to somebody about my feelings, and this is what I want to do. And basically my mom said, well, I hate to say it at this point, I'm not being like, I know the last podcast I praised my mom and said how awesome she is, and she is. I'm not talking down to her whatsoever, but at this point I told her, this is who I want to be. Why can't I be this person? Well, at this point she stated that it wasn't the right time, and she didn't want to have to go out and buy me basically a whole new wardrobe, you know? And I felt like, yes, it would have definitely been harder at that point in time, but it also would have been easier because we could have prevented this. I could have prevented my beard growth, and I could have took medication to stop the beard growth. But also I was living under their rules, and there's a lot of people in my household that it makes uncomfortable. Back then it did, and it still kind of does, but I have to respect what they want, so I didn't do it back then. So I decided, well, it's not the right time, but I did end up seeing a therapist. She was really nice and really great. Unfortunately, she is not my therapist now because she moved away, but that's okay. I have a new therapist, and I'm really liking this one, and I'm trying to keep up to date with my therapy appointments so I don't miss the opportunity to lose this therapist, because I want to stick with a therapist for a while to help me. And it was really great figuring out who I was through these high school years as well too. Now, I want to say it was my junior year of high school. Yes, it was my junior year of high school. We have these things that a lot of schools have. It's called Spirit Week, where you get to dress up. I know some schools may have a different name for them, but ours was called Spirit Week. So what we would do is we would dress up in whatever the day was. Like, say like it was 80s day. Everybody would dress up in 80s clothes, or maybe it was Hawaiian day, like you dress up in summer Hawaiian type theme stuff. But one of the days we had was a 90s day, so it was like 90s music, 90s bands, or anything really 90s related. Well, the next day after that, after the 90s day, we had a gender bender day. So it was, reversed. And I thought, well, this is perfect opportunity for me to be the person I want to be without anybody really questioning. And I thought, yes, this is so perfect. I like this idea. And I was all for it. I got all dressed up that morning and went to school and had the best time of my life and felt like it was so awesome. And I was clean shaved back then. I don't know exactly how I looked, but I was clean shaved back then and had very clear face. So my mom made me shave constantly, so I'm sure I looked fine, but I felt amazing. And yeah, that was it. And then pretty much after that, nobody really saw much of my feminine side in high school after that. I would occasionally get urges to want to be myself in high school and would have to solve those urges by sneaking things to school and going to the bathroom and secretly dressing up, or I would watch videos on my phone during my lunches or my free times within my classes. And I always wished I could have been myself in high school, could have came out and transitioned in high school, because there was things I wanted to do. I don't normally tell people this. I do tell people this, but I don't generally tell just anybody. I usually tell my close friends in private. But when I was in school, there was 3 things I always wanted to do. One of them is, some of you may know this. You've seen me or know me from high school. You saw me at the school dances. I loved to dance and was a very good dancer. Now, some people say, well, why don't you take like the jazz class that the high school had, like the jazz dancing? No, that was not my scene. I didn't want to do that kind of dancing, although I like to brush up on all sorts of dancing. No. So the main 3 things I wanted to do in high school was, 1, I wanted to join the dance team, but wasn't sure, I was not sure, if that was possible, if I was able to do that, because I noticed the dance team. And from what I noticed, the dance team was mostly just girls, And I thought, well, even if I hadn't come out in high school, it was still something I was passionate about and wanting to do. I wanted to join the dance team. And second thing I wanted to do was, I really wanted to join the volleyball team. And the third thing I wanted to do was, I wanted to be a cheerleader. And I'm being dead serious about all these. I know a lot of you know me and know that the Funk Master Bomb stuff with the rapping, the writing music, and you see this manly personality and think, that doesn't sound right. Well, because I hid my feminine personality very well. Although some people say that it was very easy to tell, they're like, you don't hide it very well. It's very easy to notice. Which I get that, because certain people I was around, I would act more feminine on purpose just to try to get them to ask questions, just to get them hey, don't think I'm assuming anything, but can I ask you a question? Something like that. I wanted people to certain people to are you? And I'm like, yes, I am. But it was just 3 things I wanted to do, and I always keep those in my mind as regrets. Even though it's the past, and I should forget about the past, it's just things I really wanted to do in my life. I wanted to be a cheerleader, and obviously if I didn't come out, I would be like a male cheerleader and have to wear the male cheerleader outfit, even though I would definitely feel comfortable wearing just a normal cheer outfit that the girls would wear, even though they probably wouldn't allow it because they're like, we can't have you wear this, even though I wouldn't mind. But anyway, that's just what I wanted to do personally myself, But that was my high school experiences with being or having transgender feelings. Now, I'm getting very close on time, so I'm going to end the podcast right here. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. I can't talk more about my transgender stuff. I mean, in the next podcast, I will continue. I will continue talking more about it. But I'm getting too long, and I need to save time for editing, so I'm going to leave the podcast right here. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's podcast. Hopefully I have explained enough for you to understand about my transgender life before I came out. I kept everything sort of to a minimum, so that way I didn't ramble on and have a 40-minute story on one topic. I wanted to bounce around and let you know about the different topics. So if you guys like this podcast, make sure to go ahead and like it, comment, and give it a subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss when I upload vlogs or podcasts. And if you're listening on Facebook, go ahead and give this a like and share if you truly like it. And if you guys want to see any certain guests on the podcast, or I'm going to talk to anybody, or whether you want to be on the podcast yourself, go ahead and email me at chadwickbaumpvlogs@gmail.com, all one word. Or you can go ahead and message me at Inspirational Posts on Facebook. So either or, let me know what you want to see, or if you want to be in the podcast, we can arrange that. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening as well.